The other observation, which is why I support the proposed composition by Honorable Sani Zoro and the Ratawu president, is that if you look at the composition of the board under Section 2, Subsection 1, it includes 2 representatives of the public, 1 representative of the Federal Ministry of Information, the Executive Secretary, and the Chairman, meaning that government nominees will have a majority of 5 in the 9-member board. We do not think that this is acceptable. The last observation, because of time, has to do with the proposed amendment to the Act in Section 3, Functions of the Council. And what we have there, and the observation here is that it has the additional effect of making the Nigerian media a department of the Federal Ministry of Information, because it states as follows: with the approval of the Minister in charge of information, establish and disseminate a national press code and standards to guide conduct of print media, related media houses, and media practitioners. Now, the attempt to subject the entire media sector to the control of the minister is further reinforced by Section 9 of this proposed amendment on Code of Conduct, which further provides that the Council shall establish a national press and ethical code of conduct for media houses and media practitioners, which shall come into effect and be disseminated after the approval by the minister. It's a considered view that a code of professional conduct for the media should never be subject to the approval of the minister or any other political authorities. So all those observations are there, and then on the basis of that, we have just 7 recommendations. The first, I think I've already stated, that this committee should emulate jurisdictions like Ghana by recommending the inclusion of the provision for press freedom in the Constitution, while it will also recommend that government shall not appoint managers of the public state media. In the Ghanaian Constitution, it's well stated that the editors of government media shall not be appointed by the government or the minister, but by the Ghanaian National Mass Media Commission. So if we have the kind of commission that Honorable Zoro proposes, it should be their responsibility so that we insulate these editors. And the point I want to stress is this, because it's very important, Mr. Chairman. We're not just here because we are media. We're also here because we fought for this democracy right from our university days. We were jailed, we were detained, and during the celebration of June 12, you must have heard of journalists who were even jailed for life. We want a democracy that will survive us. Those who are in government now should not think that they will not leave government. Today's Minister of Information could become a media owner tomorrow. Under the previous government, we fought against all restrictions on press freedom. So our appeal is that we should not only look at today, we also need to look at tomorrow. The other recommendations, very briefly, is that the composition of the board must be such that representatives of the media professional groups and associations are in the majority, because essentially this is a Nigerian press council. And apart from the suggestions made by Honorable Zoro, we think that the Guild of Editors should have 3 representatives, Newspaper Proprietors Association 3, and then 4 for the public as stated. We also think that there should be a representative of the Nigerian Communication Commission, and of course, 2 representatives of educational institutions, as he had already suggested. For the code, the point we are recommending and making is that the council should rely on the Code of Ethics of the Nigerian Press Organization, simple and straightforward. And then finally, or second to the final, this is also very important, sir, because when you look at this amendment bill, there are a number of provisions for sanctions. And we are recommending that the power to determine sanctions relating to hefty fines, because these sanctions include hefty fines. They even say journalists, individual journalists can be fined 250,000 naira, media houses 10 million, so mind-boggling. But our own position is that this power should be vested in the courts and not the council. And the Court of Appeal has clearly established this legal principle in the case of Nosdra versus Mobile Producing Nigeria Unlimited, 2018. And the relevant law is quoted here, where it held that the imposition of fines by Nosdra was contrary to its powers on the basis that penalties of fines are imposed as punishment for an offense or violation of the law. And the power, as well as competence to establish that an offense has been committed, belongs to the courts and not a regulatory agency. This is a subsisting decision of the Federal Court of Appeal. The last recommendation is that the composition of the board of the council should be based on the recommendation of the president and the confirmation of the National Assembly, because NCC and other regulatory agencies are confirmed, their boards are confirmed by the National Assembly, and we think the exercise of that oversight function is also important. I was making the point that we fought for democracy, but if you think about it, Honorable Chairman, the reason why we fought for democracy was because of the parliament, really. Because under the military, there were executives, there was the judiciary. Even under monarchies or traditional societies, what didn't make democracy was the absence of the parliament. And now that we have democracy, we want the parliament to perform its functions in true parliamentary manner by exercising its oversight functions in accordance with Section 88 of the Constitution toward the approval of the boards of this important institution, the Nigerian Press Council, just like we recommended of the National Broadcasting Commission Council yesterday. I thank you very much for the attention and time.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you have submitted your list. Thank you. I think we have come to the end of the public hearing. I want to call on the Honorable Nambas for the little submissions.
Mr. Chairman, sir, may I crave your attention that I want to...
Hello, I have the floor now. And who's speaking? Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I think, Mr. Chairman, there should be, one, we're on this side of the divide, we're not supposed to be arguing with any presentation, because we should look at the presentation, analyze them, and see how effective it will be. But it's very important that any information that the stakeholders gives to us should be one that will be very, very convincing. For example, so that if we debate on the floor of the House, it can add value. Let me give you an example. Mala Abdul Karim said, okay, Nollywood is the third largest film industry in the world. There's another document before us submitted by the same stakeholders, said it is the second largest in the world. Now, it is coming from the professional, not from this side of the divide. So we should have an harmony. Two, somebody mentioned the issue of professionals. Please kindly help us define professional as is viewed by the stakeholders on the other side and submit it to the House. Why I'm saying this is that, just like the Sani Zoro said, a journalist is defined as somebody who possesses a particular qualification and has a medium in which he is operating. So we also need to know who is the professional from this side. So by the time that you are recommending that a professional should be added as a chairman of a board or anybody, we should also be speaking from the strength of experience. And finally, Mr. Alex or somebody made a mention that, look, there should be one general body that should be put in place so that they can be able to oversee all the things. But later, he said, no. Census board should be a department in the Ministry of Information. So we want to know which one is which one is not which. So these are things that help furnish the committee so that we can be able to work. But I am very happy that we have a very substantive discussion. Thank you so much.
Sorry, the cameraman, somebody is raising his hand. Sorry, can we hear you there? Oh, you just came in now. Let's give him one. It's okay. Mr. Atebi. Sorry. So the clerk is even defending you that you have submitted the news. It's an omission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Respectable honorable members of the committee, honorable minister, my colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I want to quickly make a historical recourse. This is the third attempt to amend the Nigerian Press Council law since the advent of democracy in 1999. The first was proposed by Honorable Abike Dabiri, and it became as contentious as it is today, so much so that the 6th National Assembly appointed the committee headed by Prince Tony Momo to work on a bill and present to the House, for which all the bodies, NPAN, Guild of Editors, NUJ, including National Association of Mass Communication Teachers, the News Agency of Nigeria, and International Press Council be part of it, and they proposed a consensus bill to the National Assembly to be passed. Unfortunately, it did not see the light of day. The second attempt was by Senator Suleiman Adokwe. It also did not see the end of the light of day during the 8th Assembly. This, your third attempt, I think is noble, and I pray that it will be fruitful and see the light of day. Having said that, let me quickly draw attention to the provisions of the proposed code law. Section 2, establishment of the board of the council. It has proposed 7 members. And from the contention you have had here, the resistance about the board of the council has always been that those who are appointed who represent the interests of government should not be more than those of the industry. And unless you take care of this, you will continue to have a rejection. The second one is Section 3, function of the council. It is proposed that with the approval of the minister in charge of information, establish and disseminate a national press code and standard guide. My observations are this, sir. A professional code is designed by members of that profession, not by a third party. Secondly, the code that we are talking about is supposed to be used in the context to regulate the industry. The code is the Code of Ethics of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, which was declared in 1998 at Ilorin. Incidentally, the Nigerian Union of Journalists championed the review of that same code in 2013. It was sponsored by the United Nations Development Fund. The NUJ has signed on to it. It has been passed to the stakeholders to endorse it. If they endorse it, it is the veritable instrument for which the Press Council can use to regulate the print media in Nigeria, in the sense that just as journalists hold all of us in society accountable, so also can the Press Council hold journalists accountable with the Code of Ethics. The other next suggestion is that the Press Council has currently does not receive and process application. Again, this is a detract from Section 39 of the 1999 Constitution, where it says specifically that everybody shall be entitled to own, establish, and operate any medium of dissemination of information. Members of the industry have always harped on this to say that they don't have to register with the Nigerian Press Council. So you are going to have a Herculean task to have them register with the Nigerian Press Council. But they are amenable to being subjected to regulation of the Nigerian Press Council using the Code of the Nigerian of Ethics. Historically, the NUJ was the first to ask for the establishment of Nigerian Press Council. Secondly, Newspaper Proprietors Association, under the leadership of late Lateef Jakande, also asked for the Press Council. How did the Press Council come into being? It was instituted and composed by members of the industry itself. But because they didn't have the funds to fund it, that was why it became the baby of the federal government. Now, you have the position of the executive secretary, which the current occupant has made some remark asking to be director general. How did that come about? After the industry instituted their body, they appointed a secretary within the industry who will head the council. But when the resources were not available and they appointed an agency headed by a public servant to head it, that is how it became executive secretary. The intention is that in future, when the industry is buoyant and is ready to fund it itself, it can revert back to the status of the secretary, which was proposed by the industry. The other area I also want to point attention to is in regards Section F, and I propose that it be deleted if minister is not to approve and grant the print media or related licenses. Section G talks about National Press Code. This, though, is to be reflected as the Code of Ethics of Nigerian Journalists. There is no other code other than the Code of Nigerian Union of Journalists. Section 3, in its subsection, talks about offenses by individual or body corporate and conviction to a fine, imprisonment, or both. Mr. Chairman, sir, in the world over, breaches by journalists are seen in the context of violation of ethical code, and this is sanctioned not by trial and imprisonment, but rather by a process of ethical review. And that is why you have members of the board of the Press Council, predominantly all having experiences in journalism. So if there is a breach, they will come before the appear, and he will review and say, this is what you did wrong, this is what you did wrong. And the punishment is usually a warning, a suspension, and at the highest level, your name will be stricken from the register of the Union, Nigerian Union of Journalists, not imprisonment. That is what my colleague referred to as criminalizing journalism. If we do that, the whole world will scream at Nigeria that we are muzzling the press. Finally, Mr. Chairman, in Section 28B, it proposes a levy to be charged on the annual income of the print media. While the Press Council is in the ambit of government, is that the media, right from the outset, cannot and on its own fund the agency. Maybe in future, when it can fund the agency, it will be in a position to handle it by itself. Media houses that owe salaries to staff, and you are now asking them to pay income to the Press Council, I think, Mr. Chairman, sir, it is not realistic. The professionals involved in the business of publishing of a newspaper are the NUJ and the Guild of Editors. The newspaper proprietors are the owners of the stable. The critical buy-in of all is, as suggested by former President Sani Zoro, is important. Unless you can assemble all of them and they agree, there will not be any way forward. I wish you will find an easy way forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I just want to, I agree with your submission, but the last statement, I disagree with the last statement. The moment we agree on a law and it passes into law, everybody is bound to honor it. And that is why we have public hearing. Come out now to say your views. Submit whatever you think should be, can add value, whatever you think can add to it. Press Council is the baby of government. You have the liberty to establish any council of private own, but this one is the baby of government, and there's nothing you can do about that. You, as stakeholders, will be part of it, and the government also is a part of it. So let's agree on that, and that is why we are calling for memorandums. Submit your memorandums wherever you think we can add to it, or we can even remove from the proposed bill. It's open for us. I will now call on the Deputy Chairman of the committee to give the vote of thanks as we are moving to the end of the public hearing.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. First, let me thank God for a beautiful day like this, a day God has so designed, a day God has set aside for this purpose. You will agree with me that we have successfully gone through all that we are supposed to do. Mr. Chairman, let me thank you for piloting the affairs of all this public hearing to a successful end. I want to believe that the wisdom God has given to you, many of us will continue to learn from it. My other colleagues, let me also thank all of you for coming in your numbers. It is not actually easy. We all know that we are on break, but you decided to attend all this important public hearing. Thank you so very much. Honorable Minister, we want to also specially thank you for coming to be part of all this important public hearing. In fact, your presence has added so much value to what we are doing. Yesterday, you were here with us all through. Today again, you came, and we had successfully gone through today. Other stakeholders that have come to also add value to this public hearing, we want to thank all of you, and many others that have not been able to present or do their presentation. We also have to thank all of you. As we are rounding up today, may God grant you journey mercies back to your different destinations. Thank you so very much.
Adjournment of this meeting.
Mr. Chairman, Deputy Chair, honorable colleagues, my name is Honorable Tajuddin Adekunle Obasa, representing Ojo Federal Constituency from Lagos State, a member of this committee. In view of no further discussion, I hereby move the motion for the adjournment of the Senate. I so move.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my respected colleagues, our critical stakeholders. My name is Honorable Israel Sonigoli. I represent Brass Nimbe Federal Constituency. I'm from Bayelsa State. I hereby second the motion ably moved by my colleague, I so second.
Thank you very much, honorable colleagues. Honorable Minister, all our guests, the meeting hereby adjourned.